right. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just confirm in chat that you could see myself and these cool graphics in the background made by Oddfellows, I think. But very prismatic and dealing with shapes, which is what we're going to do today. So I'm super excited about this. Good to have you here, Vivi. Paco's in the house. Aria, Viola, awesome. Let's get this party started. And thank you so much for joining me. Keep in mind, this is the Daily Creative Challenge. We are at day 6. And all you need to do, as I switch over, fantastic, I am live. Just click the link below me, basically, if you haven't already, but that's where you can get the starter file right here, and you could check out past streams and graphics and all that good stuff. It's basically going to be this, right? This is where we're going to create some prismatic and holographic colors. So it's kind of taking some things that we've already learned and using them in a bigger, better, bolder way. And big shout out to people participating in the Daily Creative Challenges. We will be reviewing these all day today, just so you know. Shout out to Kiefer. Feel free to give maybe, I don't know, a happy face of some sort, whatever the case may be. We have some really cool work being done in here. And again, you can kind of see my original right here from day 3, and then this beautiful one actually done by Lewis. So feel free. That's the current challenge tab right there. So you guys get the idea. Let's kind of move on. Prismatic shapes, you can find that link in there. Get involved. Let's dive into this because this is the graphic that we're dealing with. Just launch this. This is what you'll see. You'll see a couple layers in there just to get us started quickly. Okay. You like the mountain landscape? Hopefully you like the mountain landscape. I don't like starting with a blank canvas just because I think it's easier if you have something to play with. Okay, but you can see off to the side, we have a number of layers that we might be playing with. We have some numbers. We have this woman that we'll deal with. We have some other graphics, kind of all based on the things we've already learned. But let's dive into prismatic shapes. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at gradients. Gradients, we've talked about them before. Okay, so we could take a look at any of these gradients. For this gradient panel, by the way, yours might look a little bit different than mine. If you click right here, I actually have it set to small thumbnails, but also I've moved a lot of these around just to make them easier. So you can orient these any way you want. This one's more purple. I can bring it down there. But notice as you click on a gradient, it's going to automatically apply the gradient fill to something. So Nuno, this is very important. It's going to apply this clipping mask to whatever layer you have selected. So just keep that in mind. You're like, oh, what happened to that doesn't look the same. Or, hey, where's the dark part of this gradient right here? Well, it is a clipping mask. That's what's happening. So right over here in your layers panel, right click, release clipping mask. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're applying gradients. Any swatch, it's going to go ahead and apply it to that layer beneath it, which happened to only be this portion here. Okay, but here it is. Here's our gradient right here, and guess what? From here I can actually click on any one of these others, and I'm just changing that gradient fill. I wanted to go in here, and if you go down to legacy gradients, you'll see lots more options, right? Legacy gradients, clicking on that. It gets added. It's actually right down here. And this is what I usually get rid of, is I get rid of a lot of these folders, and I typically take all of these and group them into one Uber folder because I would rather look at these visually, okay? But in here, you'll see in the legacy default gradients and within color harmonies, you already have this nice prismatic rainbow set up. Okay, so rather than taking one of these default gradients, double clicking on it and having to double click and try to change this to 1,000 rainbow colors, whatever the case may be, you could just pick the right one right in here from legacy gradients. So kind of pointing that out, we'll select that one. All right, cool. So we have access to all these amazing gradients, right? First thing I want to point out is, guess what? You'll click on these, you're like, oh, I like these, but they're all linear. That's kind of lame. What do I have to do to change it? You'll click on it. You'll do exactly what I did. You'll click on the gradient, and you'll go into the gradient fill, and you'll change this to radial, okay? When maybe you don't need to do that, Anna. So check it out. Radial, angle, which is fantastic, reflected, diamond. Okay, so from here, I can select any one I want, but guess what? I'm going to show you that within the gradients panel, I can change any gradient that I pick and have its default be angle right here. So I change the default to angle, or the default to radial is actually more widely used. But now if I always just want to use a radial burst, I have it right in here, and I'm just changing the default, and I can get up to speed faster, just so you know. So that's all I'm doing, kind of clicking through all of these, clicking on this one. This looks pretty cool. Hey, guess what? We could change this to angle gradient, and again, you get that nice prismatic look, which is super cool. And then we have reflected right in here. Now, what is reflected really fast? I know I'm talking a lot about colors, and I need to get into shapes. How is everybody doing? Hilda, Sam, and Sean? How are you guys? All right, I'm going to get into this. Clicking on this one. Check this out. This has most of the colors of the rainbow. Okay, looks pretty good. But I'll come in here and I'll change this, and I want to show you reflected. Reflected will make whatever's on the top, it'll put it on the bottom. So it effectively doubles this gradient. So we'll do reflected. And we get sort of double the amount of gradient right in there. Cool. All right, we're making rainbows. All right, let's shoot these rainbows through a prism, shall we? Let's do it. Let's just have some fun. And we're going to take some creative license with this as well. Okay. I could do something like Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, just to reference a very old album. But this whole idea of making this prism here, right? That burst of colors is kind of what I'm doing right now. I'll grab from my shapes panel. By the way, go to Window, Shapes, grabbing this triangle, dropping it in. There it is. Thank you very much. Double click, we'll change that to white, right? I maybe want to distort this gradient so it's actually going through that triangle, okay? Well, in order to do that, convert it to a smart object. Tanja, yes, it is a classic album, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, right? I'm not into 70s like rock and stuff like that, but I don't think you can deny Dark Side of the Moon at all, regardless of who you are, right? You cannot deny Dark Side of the Moon, right? So there we have it. Now, once we've converted this into a smart object, but by right-clicking and selecting Smart Object, I can have all this fun with it that I want. So I can go over here, I can go to Edit, I can go to Transform Path, and I can start distorting it, right? So let's distort this square shape into something else. We can shrink it down right there, and I can make it look like it's coming out of that point right there, right? But this gives me total control when I think about making a cool prismatic effect. And guess what else I can do? I could take this end, cross it over, take this end, cross it over, like so. Maybe move this up a little bit. Align it like so, align it like so, and we could do something like that. The great thing is we could always change this. Since it's a smart object, we'll go over here. We'll double click on this gradient fill smart object right in here. We could double click on it. We can change it from being reflected to maybe linear, right? We can double click on this gradient again and screw it up. Accidentally change it because you're clicking too fast, right? But I could try, like this is the one I want, like this. This looks great, right? But I can adjust these any way I want. If I want hard lines for these, right, just select this one here, right? Select any color stop. As you select it, you get these color gradient points that you can adjust and make lines thicker or thinner. Sometimes it means adding an additional stop right in here like that to make that wider. But that's how you would give it all these different stripes without adding multiple shapes, right? So that's what I would do. Okay, let's move on because I want to show you some other cool stuff and I don't have much time. Click OK. That looks good. Click OK. Saving it. Closing that. Gradient fill. There we have That looks pretty good. I'm going to go a little bit faster because, again, this is day 6. If you come down here, and this is going back to like day 2 or 3, but I'll click right down here. This will allow me to add adjustment layers. And I want to change these mountains to black and white because I just think it'll look cooler if it's set to black and white. Guess what? The black and white is only being applied to everything. Let's pull this panel out. All I need to do here is make this a clipping mask by right-click, create clipping mask. There it is, right? And we can have some fun with this. We can take this, we can kind of move it up. We can play with the depth. Maybe this triangle is actually kind of behind the mountain. You get the idea. We're just having fun at this point. Cool. Easy enough. Let's have some more fun with this, right? You ready for this? I'm going to have fun with the background and with her. Hey, you know what? We'll do the same thing really fast. We're going to make her black and white as well by applying this clipping mask to just that layer that says woman. Okay? In fact, what I can do with this, I created my fun little triangle shape. That looks fine. I'm going to take this gradient fill. I'm going to put it on top. I want it to now make it look like it's shooting out of her eyes. Why not? I would love it to have this sort of power. So taking this, let's just go into the same properties. Since this is a smart object, it's just so fun because it remembers all of my distorting that I did since it's a smart object. Select distort. See, it gives me all of these points. It doesn't give it as a flat circle, but I can come in here. I can change that to something like this, like it's going to be shooting out of her eyes. Oh, where do we come up with this stuff? It's shooting out of our eyes. I kind of want to manipulate this a little bit more. Let's move her over, actually. Let's move this over like that. Wait for it. We're going to shift her over this way. We're going to give this a little more room, right? There we go. Just like so. Something kind of like that. That's what we're going for. Cool. Shooting gradients were a major trend in 2019. Anna, I would argue that gradients are still a huge trend in 2020, but I'm always interested in hearing what you think your next trends are. I personally, if you even look in my favorites, I think the whole idea of gradients for me are getting much more subtle right in here. This like holographic look, and that's what I'm going to make. I'm going to make holographic texture that's going to be awesome. So I'm super excited about that. Okay, but I did want to start with the fundamentals. Okay, so there, that's set up. I'm going to do some quick things just to impress you. But since this is a smart object, we can transform it. It's going to remember all those settings. I could go change this a couple different ways. I can go into filter. I can go into blur gallery. I can do an iris blur since it's coming out of our irises. Hello, Afrosia. Good to have you here. Boom, there we are. I like this. This is basically an iris blur, and I'll increase that iris blur, and look, we can see it kind of blur out. Looks super cool, right? And we have total control over this, right? So we could increase the amount of the transition from 0% blurry up to 26 pixels. That's what this little dot does. But I'm throwing a cool little blur there. Let's crank up the blurriness like that, and that looks pretty awesome. We'll click OK. This is a smart object. We can change this at any time that we want. Sam Peterson in the house. Afrosia's here. Patty's here. Good to see you, everybody. Even Sugar Gang on YouTube. Fantastic. All right, so looks really cool. Another thing we can do with this is we could have some fun. Do I need to turn up my mic a touch? With just even the blend modes. Keita, I'm impressed with you. I'm always impressed with your kindness. You're like one of my favorite people to have on the live stream. But come in here with this gradient fill selected. So this is my rainbow. She's shooting rainbows from her eyes. Rainbow eyes. And we can go through and start to play with these different blend modes, right? Going through each one, seeing which one might work better for me. Like I like hard light because it shows, actually gives it this harder edged light, but you also see some of her face. Vivid light, let's go back to overlay, not bad. But I just encourage you to play with some of these. Another thing you could do is as you go down into hue, it's actually tinting the background, the colors of that gradient. So you get the idea. Color there does the same thing. So I encourage you to take a look at all those. I'm just going to change it to hard light because I think that looks kind of cool. You can still see some of the background from there. It's a little strong, but let's move on. Let's kind of play with the background and some other materials. Actually, let's give her a fun metallic jacket, shall we? If you have the starter file, you have this jacket layer. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to delete this layer mask. Shall I do that? I'm actually going to start from scratch just so everybody knows, because it'll take 2 seconds to do this. I'm going to take one of these more subtle colors, because I'm really into these subtle gradients like that. There it is. This is a subtle gradient. I'm going to pick something kind of like this, right? And remember, it's set to reflected, so I get the same on the top as is on the bottom. I'm going to take this. I'm going to convert to Smart Object, and that protects it, right? Protects that gradient. And now from here, I can have some fun swirling this around. So let's go into, and you could use all these distort options right in here. You could use any one of these. Have fun with it. I find myself using liquify more and more because in in distort, there's twirl, there's spherize, there's wave. Well, guess what? If I go into liquify, we have right up here basically the ability to push around pixels to make a wave. We got twirl. We got bloat, which is your spherize, and then we have a pucker, which is like a pinch. So basically, a lot of those tools are actually in Liquify. So I'll take this warp tool, and I'll come in here, and I'll just start pushing all these colors around, right? Pushing them around to get something interesting, right? Pushing these around, just having fun, just making sure I'm hiding some of that. There we go. Some of that edge, so pixels go from edge to edge. That looks pretty cool. Click OK. There we have our fun liquify added to our gradient. We decide we want to change this. Double click right in here. Change it to something else. You get the idea. We can change it to this one, for instance. Saving that, closing it, we get a different look. All right, let's move on. Check this out. I want this to be, again, still like a cool holographic, like reflective type material. And I still might change this color, by the way. I'm just glad I can because I know when it comes to colors for me, I change it 1,000 times, right? But right in here, let's move my panels around. My layers panel. Things are getting crazy over here. My beautiful gradients. Okay. I'm going to take this same, we're going to call this prismatic reflective thingy. We'll go into filter. This time we're going to go down to filter gallery. Okay. You want to make something look shiny, go into filter gallery, right? There's a number of artistic materials that you can use, right? We could see some of these. Let's do rough pastels. I probably should have picked something that had a little bit more contrast. But right in here, of course, we get watercolor. Interesting. Oh, yeah, the mixer brush. Yeah, Rosie, great thought. Using the mixer brush. Also using the smudge tool. Don't underestimate the smudge tool. It's amazing, right? But in here, watercolor. I'm going to change this to glass. Okay, we really can't see that much. I think I'm going to have to change the gradient really fast to something that stands out a little bit more. We'll go with this one, all right? Oftentimes, I'll move this smart object next to my actual file that I'm working on. Just grab the tab until the border highlights, and now you can see it much better, right? I changed that. That has more contrast. Try this color. There we go. That's what I'm going for. Something kind of like this. Do you guys see that? That's the glass effect. Hopefully that works for you, Alberto. Just giving it a cool glass effect. And again, that's under filter gallery. It's called glass. The great thing is I love how, since it's a smart object, it's right over here. I don't have to remember the name of it. I could jump in and just pick the one I want, right? Looks good the way it is, right? Okay, so here's her cool Technicolor jacket. Thought it'd be just a cool detail, and it really looks cool up close. Hopefully everybody's getting all these details. I want to put it inside of this woman's jacket. So what do? I'm going to use the quick selection tool, come in here, and just start grabbing just her jacket, right? Just click and dragging, and I've just selected just her jacket. Do I need that? I don't know. Holding down the Option key on Mac or Alt key on PC. Okay, let's just do her jacket. So I'm actually going to eliminate her turtleneck. I can always change this later, but we're going to make this quick and dirty. Just grabbing her jacket like so. With this selection set up, right? I have this selection set up. I can click on Layer Mask in the lower right in my Layers panel, clicking right there, and we've filled it in. You get the idea, right? Super fun, Technicolor jazziness, and I can always come in and clean this up some more. Hitting B for brush, maybe changing the hardness. I'd want to clean this up a little bit just to cover up parts that are not needed. Zoop. Clean it up a little, clean it up a little. So lasers shooting out of her eyes. A Technicolor jacket. And I can always play with blend modes here as well. So I can keep some of that tint, some of that fabric, and kind of blend it with my new texture that I made. So it's kind of up to you what you want to do. I encourage you to kind of click through these. I might just leave it as normal for now. Yeah, quick selection is my favorite tool. Like, it's awesome. So yes, it's her invisibility cloak. Maybe I'll change it to lighten. I don't know. This is the case where I changed this 1,000 times. And by the way, the reason I used, this is just a color theory rant that I'm going to go on. But, you know, if I'm adding all these colors, I don't want to have these muted tones from the background. It's just going to, looks kind of, it doesn't work for what I'm going for. I'm going for contrast of black and white, you know, a lot of contrast there, a lot of contrast in her face just by cranking up the yellows, because I know there's yellows in her skin, there's red in her skin, and I can crank that up and get just some nice depth, but it doesn't take away from the colors in here, right? Something kind of like that. Let's switch over to one I made earlier, and I'm here for questions if you have any. So many blend mode choices. Dana Pride in the house. Let's click over here. There's this one, and let's unclick this. You ready for this? Pro tip. Within the last 2 minutes, this is what I wanted to talk about with shapes. You ready for this? This is for the hardcore people that hang out with me the whole 30 minutes. I'm going to go into patterns. You have legacy patterns and more. Click one of these legacy patterns, right? It's actually a bunch of lines, okay? Click any one of them. We're going to click on this one. It's just a bunch of lines. We're going to convert this to a smart object. We did that before. We'll go into filter and we'll go into liquify, right? So it doesn't look like much. It looks like it's all gray, but let's have some fun pushing all these lines around and we get these really fun colors. Let's bloat this out a little bit. Ready? Bloating it out. See how that's starting to come to life and giving me this like really cool effect from this super fun pattern, okay? So pushing it around, getting something really interesting. I hope it's coming through on the stream. And guess what? I can add this as a texture. Clicking OK. There it is. Closing that patterns. Changing this because we want to give some texture to her jacket. Why not? Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Look at that. Isn't that amazing? And guess what? We can mix that with her jacket, whether we want it to be the lighter color or the darker color. But that gives it more of a flowy look that I absolutely love. Yeah, trippy and fun, huh? So go ahead and have fun with this. Thanks so much for hanging out with me down to the last minute. You can always duplicate that layer and just have fun with liquify on patterns, on gradients, and you'll get some really cool effects. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you created as well. Here's mine that has a little bit, spent a little more time on it. But thanks so much for watching, everyone. You guys are fantastic. You are super cool. Beverly, Afrosia, Tanja. I'm going to be watching Discord in my copious spare time. And thank you. Register for the challenges there as well. So we'll be reviewing those all day. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Appreciate you. Have a good one. Not to worry, we have the one and only Robot Pencil, Anthony Jones, up next, doing some awesome character design. I really appreciate him, and I also appreciate you. Thanks, everyone. Stay in touch. I'm going to post this to Instagram too, PTRANI on Instagram. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good one. We'll see ya.